Don't forget to check out parts 1 and 2 of this video series if you haven't already. You can find the links for these in the video description below. Hello everybody and welcome back to Tabletop Weekly and our little series here on how to create a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition character. And today I'm going to be talking about something which is a bit of a new feature to 5th edition, and that is the proficiency bonus or character proficiencies. Now, for each class on your class table, we discussed this in the previous part, but I'll throw up a reminder of what this looks like on the screen. Every character has something called a proficiency bonus. This increases as you level up and reflects your character's training and skill in certain areas. Think of this rather than being the raw talent they have from their ability score modifiers. Your proficiency bonus represents skill and training and things that you have learned. And to reflect that, each character is given a flat bonus which they can apply to any skills or saving throws or attacks with things that they are proficient in, whether that be a certain skill, whether that be a certain weapon type, whether that be a certain type of thing that they should be able to resist, etc, etc. And this is represented by the proficiency bonus. Now at first level, you'll see here it is +2, so I'm going to record that on my character sheet, which is in the proficiency bonus, which is just above your saving throw box, right next to your strength and other ability scores. And I'm going to record in there that our proficiency bonus at level 1 is +2. Now do note that it does increase as you level up, and that will have a knock-on effect as you come to level up your character. It will increase certain skills, attacks, bonuses, etc, etc. To go alongside that, each class gives you a selection of things that you are proficient in. So, to use my fighter example, as a fighter, under class features, just below where it says my hit points, which we worked out in the previous video, it says proficiencies, and it says here that I gain armor, all armor, and shields. So, in the other proficiencies and languages box, I'm just going to make a note that I'm proficient in all armor and shields. This means that I don't have any penalties when I try and wear types of armor or if I try and use a shield. It also has weapons, simple weapons, and martial weapons. There's a big table of all the different weapon types that you get, which splits them into simple weapons and martial weapons. Martial weapons are weapons that generally need a little bit more training or a bit more practice to use. Simple weapons are the kind of thing that anybody can pick up and use without needing much skill or training in. But as a fighter, I'm proficient in both of those, so I'm going to note that down on the character sheet in the same box, and this means that I get to add my proficiency bonus whenever I attack with any of those weapons, which in my case means I get to add my proficiency bonus in all weapons, regardless of whether they're simple or martial. Beneath that, there is a section called Tools. Now, as a fighter, I don't actually gain any of these, but if you're playing a different class, you may gain proficiency in other tools. Bards and Rogues are an example of this. Bards gain proficiency in musical instruments, whereas rogues gain proficiency in thieves' tools. So again, it's representing that you're good with those things, that you've learned to use them, and you get to add your proficiency bonus whenever you're making a check involving those tools. Now, underneath tools, you'll see that it also has something called saving throws. I need to explain a little bit about what saving throws are. Saving throws represent your ability to resist or dodge or persevere through conditions and magical spells and that sort of thing. Trying to walk through a cloud of poison gas might require you to make a constitution saving throw to see if you can resist throwing up or falling unconscious, etc. You might make a dexterity saving throw to dodge out of the way of a fireball thrown by a wizard. You might make a wisdom saving throw if a nymph is trying to charm you or trying to control your mind, for example. Each class gains proficiency in 2 saving throws, and it will vary depending on which class is. So you do need to refer to your class features table. And what we do to mark this, we don't write this in other proficiencies in languages. Instead, up on the top of the character sheet, just below proficiency bonus, next to our dexterity ability score, is a box called saving throws. And you can see here that it's got a little section for each of our ability scores: strength, dex, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. But it has a small circle and then a section for you to write a number or a modifier in. To represent our proficiency in our chosen saving throws, well, our given saving throws, I should say, which in the fighter's case is strength and constitution, I'm going to fill in the little box next to strength and constitution. So I'm going to fill in that little dot, and that is a marker that I'm proficient in those saving throws. What that means, very much like attacks and the tools from before, I get to add my proficiency bonus as well as my ability modifier to work out what my total bonus for those saving throws is. Serena's strength is -1, which would normally mean my saving throw would be -1 as you use your relevant ability score. However, because I'm proficient in it, marked by the filled in circle, it's actually -1, +2 from my proficiency bonus, for a total of +1. We'll work out the rest now, but basically if the circle is filled in, you get to add your proficiency bonus and your ability modifier. If it is not filled in, you only add your ability modifier to it. So, in our instance, our dexterity modifier is +3 from our 16, but we are not proficient in dexterity saving throws, so I just have a +3 bonus. Constitution, I get my +2 proficiency bonus because I am proficient in it, plus a +1 modifier from my constitution score of 12, which gives me a total of +3. Intelligence is not filled in, so I don't get to add my proficiency bonus. Instead, I just get my ability score modifier, which is a +3. Wisdom, I'm neither proficient in it, nor do I have an ability score modifier, so my wisdom saving throw bonus is simply +0. Charisma, finally, I'm not proficient in it, but I do have a +1 modifier, which means that it is a total of +1 for my charisma saving throws. So that's everything covering saving throws. The next under the class features is skills. Now, very much like everything else, different classes are going to give you different options here, but in most cases, it's going to give you a list of skills to choose from and allow you to choose a certain number of those to be proficient in. My example, for the fighter, I get to choose 2 skills from the following: acrobatics, animal handling, athletics, history, insight, intimidation, perception, and survival. These are all the names of different skills. Now, skills represent the things your character can do, possibly both in combat and out of combat. I won't go through all of them individually, but I'll give you some examples. The history skill, for example, is your knowledge of certain history. You might use this to try and identify a coat of arms, or identify the architecture used in a certain dungeon. Things like perception is your general awareness of the world around you. You might use this to try and spot somebody hiding in the shadows. You might use this to try and locate a secret door or a hidden trap mechanism, for example. Very much like saving throws, any that you choose to become proficient in based on your class feature list, so for my example I get to choose 2 from the list that I mentioned earlier, any that you're proficient in you get to add your proficiency bonus to. Now, each skill has an associated ability score with it. For example, acrobatics is dex, which is indicated by the grayed out dex in brackets, which means that you would also add your dexterity modifier, and if I were proficient in the skill, +2 for my proficiency bonus. So it works out exactly the same as the saving throws. You just need to figure out, you need to look and see which is the relevant skill modifier that you add to that particular skill. Now, for my choices, I get to choose 2 from acrobatics, animal handling, athletics, history, insight, intimidation, perception, and survival. And I think the 2 I'm going to choose, and this is where your core character concept is really going to come in handy. You want to think back to that character idea that you had and think, okay, what would this person have learnt to do? What would this person want to try and learn to do as they kind of develop their adventuring career? What's important to them? You can power game it and look at which are your highest ability scores and only choose skills relevant to those. But really what you should be doing is thinking about that core character concept and saying, I want my character to be good at X because that's what they'd be good at. So for my example with Serena, I know I want her to be quite well educated, and for me, I think that would reflect well in gaining knowledge in the history skill. So I'm actually going to become proficient in the history skill as one of my 2 choices. Now, with regards to my other choice, I decided that I wanted Serena to come from like some sort of sacred grove or to be some sort of guardian of a sacred grove. And because forest gnomes are very known for their, ability to communicate with animals and things like that. I kind of see her as being a bit of a Disney princess with a bow who loves animals and is this tiny little creature. So I actually want to take the animal handling skill. This isn't a skill that I've got particularly high stats in. It uses wisdom, which is just a 10, which means I gain no bonus, but I think it reflects her upbringing and her training, and it would make sense for her to have skills in this particular area. So I'm going to mark that down. I'm going to fill in the animal handling box, just fill in the little circle there, and that means that is I get to add my proficiency bonus to that skill later on. Now, we could work out all of our skills now, very much like we did with our saving throws. However, I would recommend you wait to do this, because when we choose our background, which we'll be covering in just a moment, you will get to add some more skills you're proficient in. So hang fire for now. You might want to work out one or two, perhaps the ones that you've just become proficient in, or whichever ones you chose. You can work those out now. So for example, our animal handling, it's a wisdom-based skill, so I gain no ability score modifier because my wisdom modifier is 0, but I do get to add my proficiency bonus because the circle is filled in, which means that I have a total of +2. History, on the other hand, uses intelligence, of which I have a +3 ability score modifier. +2 from my proficiency bonus, because I'm proficient in it, means I have a history of +5, which is pretty good. But we're not going to work out the rest yet because we don't know what else we're going to become proficient in. We're going to wait until we select our background. But that should give you a clear idea on how to work out your skills for now. The next thing we're going to do, which is a little bit simpler, is we're just going to make a note and make some selections based on our class features. Now, in the previous video, we did record those class features. One is fighting style for the fighter, and the other is second wind. And again, this is going to vary depending on what class you pick. There's going to be different options, so make sure you check out the player's handbook and your relevant class features list. And I'm going to make a note just somewhere on my character sheet that I have fighting style archery, and I gain a +2 bonus to attack rolls with ranged weapons. For my second class feature, second wind, I don't need to make any choices. I'm just going to make a quick note about the rules, which is that on my turn, I can use a bonus action to regain hit points equal to 1d10 plus my fighter level, but I can need to finish a short or long rest before I can use that feature again. The next thing we're going to choose, and this is something that we've alluded to in several parts of the previous videos, is our background. Now, a background represents skills that you've picked up as part of your early life. So, with the case of Serena, we'd be thinking about her upbringing as a noble daughter, as somebody who grew up in a refined kind of environment, who probably had a good education, who probably was well looked after, had servants, that sort of thing. And backgrounds give you a few mechanical benefits, such as skill proficiencies, tool proficiencies, languages, maybe a little bit of equipment as well. But the main thing they do is provide you with options of writing down personality traits, ideas. It gives you something as a role-playing aid to kind of help develop your character a bit better. There are mechanical benefits, as I mentioned, but really you should be thinking of this as your character's backstory and history, giving you a little bit of flavor and mechanics to your character. Now, Serena's a nice and easy option. The actual background choices start on page 125, and there's a bunch of them to choose from. There are additional ones in other books as well, but we won't go into those. Instead, we're just going to be using the ones in the player's handbook, and very conveniently for Serena, there is actually a background called noble, which is you've come from some sort of wealthy family, you have some sort of position of privilege, etc, etc. Now, turning to the noble section in the backgrounds chapter, it will have, very similar to the class features, it will have a small selection with bolded titles, which list additional things that you gain. Now, for Serena, we're going to be gaining proficiency in the history skill and the persuasion skill. Now, persuasion is a skill we don't have any proficiency in, so I'm just going to mark that by filling in the circle on our skills list on our character sheet. But we already have proficiency in history thanks to our fighter class. In this case, what I would do is I would go back to the fighter's class list, the class features, look at what available skills there were again, and choose a brand new one to go in history's place for my instead. So I'm probably going to look at I kind of like the idea, thinking about her background and things like that. If she gained a lot of her knowledge of history from, her upbringing and her education, what did she do for fun? I kind of like the idea that, because you don't just study all the time. She's obviously learned to fire a bow at some point, but that natural grace, that agility had to come from somewhere. So I like the idea that she maybe used to be maybe a dancer. Maybe she kind of did, took dancing lessons and things like that. Maybe that would be something that we could write up into her background, her culture, her family that she comes from. Maybe that's an important thing. So I'm going to actually give her training in the acrobatic skill by filling in the proficiency, the little dot to mark that I'm proficient in that as well. Flicking back to our background selection, under tool proficiencies, it also says we have one type of gaming set. Now this is more for a little bit of flavor, and by gaming set we mean card games, dice games, the kind of things that you might want to gamble with one day. Obviously you learn to play a certain game. It could be chess, it could be liar's dice, it could be a made up card game for your homebrew D&D world, whatever it is, we get to choose one set. As a GM, I normally just let people choose like dice, cards, other game, something like that, or maybe a sport game or something like that. And for Serena, I kind of like the idea maybe that she learned to use dice. Maybe that's where she kind of got to meet some of her bodyguards, and they used to play dice, and she would jump in and play with those guys when they weren't watching her. So I'm going to actually put down in other proficiencies and languages that I am trained in gaming set dice. We also gain a language of our choice. Now, languages, there's a few options you can make. These can all be found on page 123, and they're broken down into standard languages and exotic languages. If you gain a language from a source, such as a race or a background, that just says any language of your choice, you can choose from either list. For Serena, I think it makes sense that, Sacred Grove, being in the forest, being near the Feywild, I'm actually going to give her training in Sylvan, which would allow her to talk to creatures such as dryads and nymphs and strange creatures and that from the Feywild, and I think that makes the most sense for her. Finally, it gives you a few equipment ideas as well. So it gives me a set of fine clothes, a signet ring, a scroll of pedigree, and a purse containing 25 GP. I'm just going to note that in my little equipment section right at the bottom of the sheet. And then just one last thing, actually, we also gain an additional feature from our background. Now, these will vary depending on the background you choose. I get something called Position of Privilege, which is thanks to your noble birth, people are inclined to think the best of you. You are welcome in high society, and people assume you have the right to be wherever you are. The common folk make every effort to accommodate you and avoid your displeasure, and other people of high birth treat you as a member of the same social sphere, and you can secure an audience with a local noble if you need to. So that represents, being from a family which obviously has some influence and power, gives you a little bit of role-playing, clout, as it were. And these will vary depending on which character you are. Some of them are more mechanical, some of them are more role-playing based, some of them are about sort of what you do in your downtime. They're all different things. Check them out, whatever works for your character. You can also talk to your GM about changing these ever so slightly. For example, with the Noble, there is actually a variant called Knight, which is that you belong to a certain, you are a Knight of the Realm, or you're a Knight of a certain order, and that has a variant feature of Retainers, which actually gives you 3 Retainers, 3 NPCs, which are loyal to your family, that perform very mundane medial tasks. So, for example, a messenger or a handmaiden or a scholar or something like that, and it will be up to your GM if they want to allow you to have that sort of thing and what they could be. Once you've recorded all of this, we now have all of our skill proficiencies from pretty much everything. So you might have gained skill proficiencies from your race, your class, and now your background. Now we can go through and work out all of the rest of them for our remaining skills. And you work this out exactly the same way as before. If the circle is filled in, you take the relevant ability score modifier plus your proficiency bonus for your total. If the circle is not filled in, you just use your relevant ability modifier. Remember, not the full score, not the full number like 16 or 14, but whatever its relevant modifier is. If you'd like to learn more about modifiers, make sure you watch part 2 of this series, as that's where I go into that in detail. The last thing to talk about with regards to background, now that we've worked out all of our skill bonuses, is you'll notice something in the backgrounds called personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. Each background gives you a table or a chart of sample options that you can either choose from, roll for, or you can make up your own as well. These are meant to be role-playing aids that you can quickly glance down on to give you a reminder of who your character is and what's important to them, as well as what their flaws are and what they might fight for. To give you an example, under the Noble one, some of the suggested characteristics for personality traits are things like: my eloquent flattery makes everyone I talk to feel like the most wonderful and important person in the world. Or, the common folk love me for my kindness and generosity. But it can also be things like, my favour once lost is lost forever. These are pre-written ones, but they give you an idea of some of the things that your character might be about. Quick little references that you can go to as a little bit of a role-playing aid. Ideals tend to be more related to your alignment, so they're things that you hold in high regard. This could be respect, or power, or independence, and each one will be tied to things. And again, whilst you can use the ones that are listed in the PHB, or you can even roll for them if you don't know, you can just roll for the heck of it and see what you get, you can also make up your own as well. Bond is something that either ties you to a place or a person, something important to you as a character. It could even be an object itself. It's something that your character would die to fight for, whether that's a person, a place, or an object. It can also just be, something a bit more abstract, that loyalty or friendship or love. It can something that is very important to your character, basically. And then finally, flaw, probably the most interesting one of them all, is this is something which is a flaw of your character, something to represent the more negative traits of them. To give you an example, under the noble section, some of the ones that they suggest for you, I secretly believe that everyone is beneath me. I hide a truly scandalous secret that could ruin my family forever. I have an insatiable desire for carnal pleasures. Ooh. My favorite one, though, has to be, in fact, the world does revolve around me. And they're wonderful little things to give you that slightly, kind of make your character a little bit more interesting, a little bit more well-rounded, rather than just making them absolutely perfect, practically perfect in every way, to quote Mary Poppins. So yeah, have a look at those. Select ones or write ones that suit your core character concept and ways that you want to develop your character, and then go from there. The last thing I'm going to talk about, and this is more of a role-playing thing, just to fill in, and it's so that we can actually complete our top box here, next to our name, is alignments. Now, alignments it's something that some D&D groups kind of take a very hard, mechanical, rules-focused stance on, and it's something which some groups kind of hand-wave and dismiss all entirely. Your alignment represents your moral compass, per se, and it's actually split down into, you make a choice of 3 options twice. You choose to be either lawful, neutral, or chaotic, and then you also choose to be either good, neutral, or evil. And yes, this means you could take neutral twice, which is known as being true neutral. Now, the way to think about it is a lawful character is somebody who obeys the law, has respect for the law, they will follow a king. They're the type of character who, if the king says do this, then that's what we do. If the militia or the police say this, that's what we're going to do. They are law-abiding citizens. They believe in it. They believe in the ideas of law and order and justice, and they believe that anarchy and chaos and freedom is something which just, leads down darker paths, or leads to folly, basically. A chaotic character is the opposite. They're an anarchist. They believe that law and order just ruin everything, that people should be free. They're the kind of freedom fighters, that sort of thing to think about. Good and evil is as it sounds. My way of explaining this is that to be good is to be selfless, to be evil is to be selfish. So evil acts tend to be selfish or power-hungry ones. Good acts tend to be selfless, charitable ones, or ones that benefit the greater good, or the greater number. The way that the thing about alignment is it's all about the pairing. So you're going to choose one from lawful, neutral, and chaotic, and then you choose good, neutral, or evil. Now, the way that they match up can mean entirely different things. A lawful good character and a chaotic good character can be at utter ends with each other, because they represent very similar ideas in how people should be treated, but their approach to that is completely different. A chaotic good character might try and fight to break somebody out of jail because they were arrested for stealing food to feed their family. A lawful good character might fight to keep that character in jail, to say, no, they've broken the law, they need to an example needs to be made, or everybody's going to steal from everybody, and then we have anarchy. So it's really interesting alignment. It's an interesting play around with things. Do check it up. There are some really good explanations on each of them online. There's some very funny ones online as well. There's a classic meme of kind of showcasing the D&D alignments with pop culture figures, comic book characters, that sort of thing. And actually, they can be quite a good way of thinking about it. Like, Captain America is, he can be both lawful good and chaotic good, but a lot of people are kind of associate him with neutral good, which is he just believes in doing what's right no matter what. He believes in doing what is the best course of action for that time, for that person, even if it means going against, Tony Stark in Civil War, or going against, the government. He's going to do what's right. And I like that. I like that those different kind of ways to kind of represent that alignment stuff. In the next video, we're going to be talking about armor class, initiative, working out your attack bonuses and the different weapon types, as well as a little bit on spell casting. I hope that this series is proving useful to you guys. Don't forget to check out the playlist and the previous parts on any points of character creation you may have missed. I hope you enjoy it. Please do give a thumbs up if you found it useful. Subscribe so you make sure you get the next parts of the playlist coming out to you straight to your sub boxes. And that's pretty much it. Thanks very much. I will see you next time.